Today on the 1% podcast, we're honored to have Tommy Ahlquist with us. Tommy is the president and CEO of Ahlquist LLC. He's a great friend and mentor. He's a great asset to the community here. Prior to working in development, Tommy was an ER physician for 18 years. I grew up in Magna, Utah, before eventually coming to Boise, so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about his story, what led him through medicine, ultimately to development. Grateful to have Tommy here in Boise, Idaho. He's a great contributor to the community. He and his wife, Shanna, have done so much to help and to benefit so many people. So we're grateful to have Tommy on the podcast with us today. Talk to us about finding that balance in life. That every single person has certain innate abilities. So you go through medical school, so you go to the University of Utah, graduate there, go to medical school, finish there. What brought you to Boise? What brought you up here?
So I think you make a couple of excellent points. I mean, first of all, we live in the greatest country in the history of the world.
Okay, well, welcome to the podcast. On the 1% podcast, we're welcome Mr. Tommy Ahlquist. Glad to have you here with us, Tommy.
Nice to be with you, Cam.
Yeah, appreciate it.
I've done this to you, so I deserve it.
That's right. Well, I appreciate you return the favor, so it's good. It's good to be with you. So today I wanted to kind of get into, I think that a lot of people know here in Boise, sometimes in life as an adult, it kind of reminds you of like when you were a kid. And I sometimes feel like I'm like back in junior high, and Tommy Ahlquist is like the popular kid that everyone wants to be friends with, everyone wants to hang out with, everyone wants to be around. You really do. Like, you have a gift for connecting people, uniting people, building networks, like building trust and relationships. Like, to me, that's been one of the biggest things that I've taken away, that I've learned from you, is seeing you as like a friend and a mentor. That Tommy connects people, and you're amazing at that. You do a great job of that. And so I think that a lot of people know of Tommy the businessman, but maybe people don't know as much Tommy the person. Yeah. And so that's what I'm kind of hoping to get into today, a little bit to start out with. So talk to us about growing up. Tell us where you're from, where you grew up at. So you grew up in Magna, Utah, is that right?
Yeah, so I had an incredible childhood. Grew up in Magna, Utah. So my Magna is right next to Kennecott Copper. In fact, both grandparents lived in Arthur, which was the actual corporate housing development for Kennecott Copper. Okay. And then eventually they moved into their own homes at some point. But a big mining history, both sides. So my dad worked at the mine. Both of my grandpas worked at the mine. Wow. My great-grandpas worked at the mine. Very, very blue-collar family. People don't go to college. You went and worked at the mine. Hardworking people, and just wonderful people. I had kind of an interesting split too, because my mom's dad worked at Kennecott Copper, and he was like very Mormon and LDS. Yeah. My dad's dad was very Catholic and hated Mormons. Okay. And so I kind of had this really, both of them loved the country. They were both very patriotic. Very much great examples of Americans, hardworking, great, taught me a bunch, but also very different in a lot of ways. Yeah. But I got to grow up with both of them, grew up on a farm in Magna, Utah, and just had an incredible childhood. As you go through life, you look back and say, why did you do the things you did, and who motivated you? For me, my one Grandpa Pedersen, I lived right next door to him in his backyard.
This is your mom's dad.
My mom's dad, and he was the man. Like, when you were talking in your intro about connecting, and I was thinking that's who I owe it to. Yeah. This guy was that, but I'll never be that. He was like he was the guy.
He was the original.
He was the original, yeah. And when he talked, you believed him. I always tell people sometimes people talk to you and you hear them. And with him, you felt it. When he told you could do anything, you knew you could do anything. Yeah. When he told you what are your dreams, and you would explain your dreams as a boy to him, and he'd go, "Let's go do that." Yeah. I had a couple of incredible experiences with him. Just to kind of, I told you I talk too much, but one very important memory for me. So he had 9 kids, and his youngest son was Josh, who was a year younger than me.
Okay.
So I got to grow up with my
I've heard you talk about your
Yeah.
younger uncle.
Yeah, so I got to grow up with my Uncle Josh,
Okay.
next door neighbors, like brothers, but he was my uncle. And we went to my grandpa. We were Eagle Scouts at 13.
Yeah.
And we went in, and I remember the day we were like, we already had like 35 merit badges, and I was sitting there with Josh, and we're like, let's get all of them. And we walked outside and said to my grandpa, hey, we're going to get every single merit badge. There was 121 of them. And he looked at us and he said, let's do it. He's like, it's going to be hard.
Get all the palms.
Yeah. Well, usually people get 2 or 3 palms. I mean,
Yeah.
you need 21 merit badges to get an Eagle, right?
Yeah.
And this was 100 more than that.
Yeah.
And there was some hard ones like bugling and sailing and beekeeping and, train engineering. And
Yeah.
back they've changed a little bit since then.
Yeah.
So you had to, it was a couple years. But we spent a couple years, you think about that as a 13-year-old boy with your grandpa and your uncle, who's your best friend.
Getting to spend all that time together working on all those different
doing
things.
cool
and
stuff,
learning about them.
raising every kind of animal, doing every kind of craft, learning how to, and we had very simple means. So as kids trying to figure out how are we going to get our sailing merit badge, right? And how are we going to afford it? How are we going to earn money to go do some of these things? It was just really cool. And he took us everywhere to do it. So it was that was a big deal for me growing up, and certainly kind of my hero, my guy that kind of always was the guy that what anchored me.
Well, that makes a lot of sense because I see you with your grandkids too, right? I see you with Cash, and I've been over the house and seen all the pictures on the walls and everything, and I've seen Chloe's video where she asks him, "Hey, if you had to choose Papa or me, who'd you choose?" Like Papa, right? Yeah. Like no question, right? And so like seeing that obviously had a profound impact on you, and not only the kind of dad that you wanted to be, but the kind of grandfather that you wanted to be as well.
Yeah, I'm getting old, Cam, and you get pretty reflective.
49, is that?
Yeah, I wish. Days? Yeah, it was a long time ago for me. So you look at life now a little differently, and I think it's part of I've read a few books in the last couple of years, which is the last third of your life. Yeah. And what do you do? What do you want to spend the rest of your time doing? And you kind of get to this point where you're like, what really matters? And you think about the times, I'm sure you're going through some of those, and you're kind of in that time where it's so busy with work and sports and your family and just, all the different things you do in the community. And I look back on those days. I have no regrets, but it went by really quickly. And all of a sudden you blink and your kids are like, whoa, that 5 years could not have been 5 years. And it was really enjoyable, but really busy. Yeah. And now, man, now I'm got a little more perspective. Yep. And you get these grandkids, and it honestly, I've told this story a couple times to some of my friends, but I came home the other day, and Shanna's out in the garage, and we have this farm, and she's got every little, we've got little bunnies and little chicks and pigs and goats, and it's springtime, so everything's got babies, right? And I came home, and she was in the garage, and with her chicks, and I said, "Hey, did you have a good day?" And she started kind of weeping, and I'm like, "What's wrong?" She's like, "I'm just so grateful." And the boys had been there all day with her, and we just had this moment of like, this is the best part of life, just being with these kids and trying to enjoy it. I think you just savor it more, right? Like it's just, and then they go home. My son-in-law's been out of town this week, so we've had him over every night. And then when they go, it's just we flop on the couch and just man, we're just exhausted. But it is just wonderful. It's the best. It's the best.
Talk to us about, and I didn't anticipate getting into this quickly, but talk to us about finding that balance in life. Yeah. There's a lot of people that have differing views on this. David A. Bednar gives one that I love about the spinning plates, right? And he went and saw this guy one time, like a magic show or something, and the guy's spinning all these different plates and setting them down, and as he's spinning this one, pretty soon the one that he'd done 10 before starts wobbling, slowing down, then you go spin that one. He gave that analogy. Some people believe that there is no such thing as finding balance. Yeah. I personally believe that finding balance is achievable, and I do think that it's important because you do have different demands on you, right? You're Tommy Ahlquist, not only the businessman, CEO of Ahlquist Development, but you're also a dad, you're a husband, you're a grandfather. Like you wear a lot of different hats, as we all do. for you, what does that look like of finding balance in that? But how, maybe on a broader perspective, how do you find balance in at what point is enough, right? And at what point is, hey, am I creeping into the law of diminishing returns here where I'm working and I'm earning things and I'm making influence, I'm doing these things, but where do I find that balance of, am I spending too much time in certain areas of my life and not enough time in times in others? I'm sure this is something that you
I think
have to think about a lot.
I thought a lot about it, and I've actually had a lot of guilt in different decades of my life over this exact issue. If you think about my path, I remember getting home from my LDS mission and wanting to go to medical school because I was inspired. Our little local doctor on the corner, Dr. Knowles, I just always wanted to be a doctor, but I knew no one. No one went to college.
Yeah.
I'm like, how am I going to do this?
Yeah, so for you to go be a medical doctor was
so
gonna be a
I
huge
remember
challenge.
like looking at the jobs board. This is for you young guys. This is like, so the jobs board, and the only thing that didn't require the hospital any experience was a phlebotomist. I didn't even know what that meant. I applied for the job, had to go home and look it up in a dictionary, which is a book for all those people listening. There's these things.
This is 1989, roughly?
Yeah.
Because you started mission in Brazil, right?
Brazil, yeah. So but what I'm saying is, from that moment when I got home, I played basketball up at Rick's College and went to Brazil on a mission, got home. But from that moment, I worked 4 jobs through undergraduate and medical school, the whole way through, 4 jobs. And I just worked. I didn't take out any debt. And so even during that time, I got married to Shanna, and we waited a few years to have kids. She worked 2 jobs. I worked 4 jobs, and I was going to school, and I was going to medical school. It was crazy. I did night shifts in the pediatric ICU for years, where I would draw blood on the babies in the NICU. And then during the day, I'd go to medical school, and then I had a trophy business where I would make trophies.
I remember you telling me this.
And I had a cleaning business, and I loved it. And so for me, like, if you would have said during school, think about that time in my life, is your life balanced? I'm going back to your question.
Yeah.
Nobody else, they're like, you're crazy. You're like, but for me it was normal because I didn't want to take out debt. I didn't want to go to debt. I didn't have money. I didn't have connections. I had to go do all this stuff, and I had this goal. But so that I felt guilty though during that. And then you start having kids, and now you're out, and now you're poor. You've been driving the same car for 20 years. You're in, you're just eating ramen and trying to figure out
rice
life.
And beans and rice.
And now all of a sudden, someone will pay you. I remember the day I start residency. So when you finish medical school, you get your diploma and you're done. You're a doctor, but then you have to go to residency. And our residency had an unwritten rule that you couldn't moonlight. And I found out that I could go to Safford, Arizona, to Benson, Arizona, which is right down by the border, and I could go do a 24-hour shift in the hospital in a one-room ER, and they'd pay me $50 an hour, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can make $50 an hour for 24 hours, and I moonlighted my butt off, and I had kids, so I would go from my residency to moonlighting, and I moonlighted almost every day. I worked every day of the month, so that wasn't balanced.
When did you sleep?
I didn't sleep, right? So then I get out of residency and I come up here, and immediately I was very entrepreneurial. We started our first company, Stat Pads, like the year after I got up here, and so I started that company. I started working here. I kind of burned it at both ends, and you start getting busy on church. But I look back at my life, I don't really have regrets about that. So then I'm getting to the point. I remember distinctly, it was on a podcast about 5 years ago. Only one of my friends I had on, and I was sitting there with him, and I brought up the balance question like you just did to me, and he looked at me, he's like the second I started thinking about priorities and are they balanced instead of time, he says that's when you'll know you've figured out. And since that time, it's only been 5 years ago for me, I'm like, that's right. Because if I look at all those times, if I call them, the 4 titles, right? Son of God, right? Husband, father, disciple, right? Yep. If you're putting those titles in the proper perspective, and if you're staying in the right place that you need to be with God, if you're staying with the right place with the relationships that are most important to you, around you, and you're putting effort and being intentional about those, you may go through times where your time is not balanced. But your intentions, your motives what makes you as balanced. And so I think that's easier to keep in check, and you have less guilt with that.
Yeah.
If you can wake up in the morning and do your morning routine and say, hey, I'm in good balance. I'm in good balance. Now your day, ironically, Cam, right now I'm working harder than I ever have.
And I see that
right now.
I see it. Obviously, we're up here in the same floor.
Like right now, I'm coming in here as early as I can in the mornings. I'm staying late. I'm on emails till 11:30 every night, and it is a phase. We've had incredible fortune in the last 6 months, and so I've got all these projects we're trying to get lined up. There will be a time when I can go back to 10-hour days here, but I love it. I just love it. But within that, I make sure when I get home, and it might be at 7, might be at 6:30, might be at 8, that I just put my phone down, and for that next bit, I'm locked in with my wife, or with my grandkids, or with whatever. I'm trying, but it's busy right now, and she's been with me long enough. We've been married, I better not say it, I think it's 37 years, but I might be wrong. I should have done the math before I came on here. But it's a long time. It's a long time. But so it's a tricky question. I think the last thing I'll say on balance, there are people, and as I get older now, I look at my friends who may have had very balanced lives, and they're miserable.
Yeah.
And what I learned from them is, you better be passionate about what you do in a balanced way with your priorities, versus some guys that probably all the time I was working were playing golf 4 times a week.
Yep.
And they looked at me like I was crazy, saying, this guy's out of balance, and look at and now they're my age.
Yep.
And they're like, no purpose in life. They look 15 years older.
Yep.
Than me. They're it's just, I'm like, and they didn't have that passion. They didn't have drive. So
I think that's great. I love the way that you answered that, because I think that maybe too much when people talk about balance, it is a focus on time rather than a focus on priorities, right?
Yeah.
And at different stages of your life, that balance will look different. I think that if you can outline ahead of time what my priorities are, an exercise that I go through when I'm coaching or mentoring people, is say, describe in detail what you want your life to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now.
I love that.
Right? What do you want your life to look like? And then we got to start working backwards, and you have to go relentlessly pursue what you want that life to look like. And I look back, same sort of thing, right? I graduated from high school. I helped coach football and was, working for my dad at the time. Another friend of mine, he was a coach of mine, called and said, hey, do you want to help coach my son and your little brother playing on the same Optimist team? So I'm working all day, then I'm going and coaching football at the high school, then I'm going and coaching my little brother's team and with this mentor friend of mine. So doing that, I leave, I go on a mission, I come home, and the only way that I knew to do things was okay, just go do as much as you can, right? And so I started taking 15 credits a semester, working, and it's okay, well, I can do more than this, and it's 18 credits, and it's 21 credits a semester. And my friends would look at me like, you're nuts. I'm taking 3 classes. I don't get up till noon. I go play all these intramural sports, or go do fun stuff, or go do whatever. And I just didn't do any of that stuff. I didn't have time to do any of it. I was either working, or I was in class, or I was in the library, right? And so my college experience wasn't what most people's college experience was. But I look back on that, and I'm grateful that I did that, because I knew what I wanted my life to look like. And I knew, okay, I want to be a dad. I anticipate having kids probably within the next 5 years. And then by the time your kids are 10, they're really involved in things. And if I want to be highly involved in my kids' life, that gives me 15 years to go build the life that I want, to the degree that I want, where I can be there, right?
And how
can
fast
be
is
present.
that? I think some
flew by.
Well, it's really, I just wrote a text the second I left my office and came in here. And it's to one of our business partners whose mother's just passed away this week, and he just got back from her funeral, and he lives in California. And in the text message, I had said, hey, I'm glad you're back, and just checking in on him was what I was doing, just seeing how he was doing. And then we got back to business, and I use a line that I say all the time, which is life is long.
Yeah.
And then I went ... until it's not, right? His mom just passed away. And if you think about that, think about how fast 15 5 years goes by, and back to trying to mentor someone preparing for their life, if you just knew how quick it went, right?
You wouldn't waste it.
You wouldn't waste it.
Yeah.
You wouldn't waste it. And then the flip side of that is you do have, like I talk to people I am fortunate enough through Mission 43, through a couple other relationships I have, to mentor people all the time. Like I probably have 2 to 3 now a week that I check in with, either in person or over Zoom. Mm-hmm. And what I love about life in America, you can reinvent yourself. So life is long. So one of the things I always say is life is long. You had this storied military career, or you had this storied career in something for those that weren't in the military, and now you're out. And within 2 to 3 years, you can reinvent who you are. You can refocus on your relationships. You can get back to a place where you feel really fired up about your daily life. You feel good about yourself. You feel good about your health, and you have something you're passionate about. And you can do that a few times in life. So life is long.
Yeah.
But it goes by quickly.
Yeah.
So this idea of being intentional, even if you know you may have times you reinvent yourself, but you're finding passions, and passions change too. I will tell you that. They do. You think about people as you go through life, and they should, right? Yeah. I mean, we're not the same when we're 20 or 30 or 40 as we are. I mean, I'm approaching 60 now. Yeah. Like it's
your
different.
Circle, your friends are going to change.
Friends are different
because you grew up in the same neighborhood as these kids. Those were your friends growing up. You went to college with these people. You lived in the same neighborhood with these people, or went to church with them, or had whatever connections. As time changes, life evolves, and friendships should evolve, and
and you will evolve as a person, and back to your priorities. The only other thing I'd say, because I know how motivational you are, Cam. I mean, that's part of your thing, and you've been blessed with a gift that few have. But people have asked me for what are the hacks you use? What are the ways you try in your life? What have you found to be efficient?
Yeah.
And for me, if I can use the morning time, because that's the time you reset, right? Yep. We have these circadian rhythms for a reason, and we have nighttime for a reason, and we have this reset, new day, sun's up the next day. If you can use those hours early to get yourself right, and I don't mean, there's a lot of people say, yeah, I get up every morning and I go do Pilates, or I do run, or I do whatever. Great, that's awesome. And I try to work out too, right? I mean, but what I'm talking about is different than that.
Yeah.
I'm talking about, can you get right in your own head, whatever that means to you, on what your priorities are, and kind of reset yourself? Can you hold yourself accountable in the morning, in whatever your quiet moment is, where you go, okay, I might have had a heck of a week where I have not done the things that I know I need to be doing to get where I need to go. But if you can every day say, I'm resetting, and today's going to be the perfect day. Here's what it looks like. Here's how I'm going to treat people. Here's the energy I'm going to bring. And it may last you till 10 or 11 on some days, but you get a reset every day.
Yeah.
That is, to me, the successful people are keeping themselves in check to their priorities and the things that really motivate them in life on a daily basis. They're not perfect by any means, and I am not perfect. But if I can do that every day, I am far better off than if I don't.
Yeah, they're intentional.
They're intentional.
Every really amazing person that I've ever had the privrige to meet, to learn from, to work with, is intentional. They don't go through their life. Isn't that interesting? It is.
There's I don't want to mention it because it would speak poorly of me, but there's been a few times in my life when I didn't know somebody. I think, oh, that guy just got lucky. That guy got lucky. He had this or that, or he picked the right URL for a website, or he woke up on third base and thought he hit a home run. Yep. Or there's all these sayings that we think of, and then you get to know them, and you're like, wow, intentional.
Yep.
Driven, purpose, that whole kind of, vision, clarity, plan, action, kind of, they know what they're doing. And it's all, every time it happens, I almost kind of laugh inside, like, I should have known that, and they do it differently too. Yeah. I guess that's the other point. Like, we're all built with different DNA, different stuff. So the other thing is, I think these qualities that we're talking about, that's why I love what you're doing. They're learned.
100%. 100%.
You'll be around people. I've got one guy I'm mentoring right now, and he's like, the interesting thing about him is he's a storied military veteran. Like but now he's just like questioning himself.
What's my purpose? What am I doing?
What am I doing?
What am I good
and
at?
Almost questioning his own qualities, leadership qualities that have got him so far. And what I'm telling him is, hey, you might feel that way, but lots of people feel that way. You might not feel you're where you need to be in leadership. Lots of people feel that way. You might have blind spots where you're not patient. You don't think of others. You're not kind enough. You don't listen, right? All of those things. Make a list of the things that you need to work on. And that is the mark of a good leader. That's the mark of someone that figures it out and ultimately finds happiness and passion, and not that they arrived there, right? And when I told him that, he's like, oh, that makes sense. And I've watched him now as he's worked, the momentum. I think it's a great word, right? I think momentum is a great word. I think spiraling is a great word. A lot of people do. And I think building momentum to where you're now, okay, I'm seeing it. I've got my vision. I know where I'm heading. I got my plan. I'm authentically doing my thing, and I'm starting to feel it. And it's amazing how quickly someone can go from doubting themselves, self-doubt, to this guy's on fire.
Yep.
Quickly, and then just watch it roll.
Yeah.
Right.
We use the analogy. We were doing a training for some of our people a week or two ago, and the analogy came up of a tool belt. And you talk about gifts that certain people have, and everyone has them. I'm convinced that every single person has certain innate abilities, that whether they learned that before they were born or whether that's something they're given or gifted or whatever, but everyone has certain talents and innate abilities that they come to life with. Some people are born on third base, so to speak, and they are. And, it could be argued that everyone, if you're fortunate to be born in the United States of America, you're fortunate enough to live here in, Boise, Idaho, if you're fortunate enough to have two parents that love you and care about you, in so many ways you could break down, seemingly being born on third base. But I think a lot of times people think about that maybe financially or with opportunities that certain people have. And I think that, it could be said of a lot of people. Talk to me about some of those things, maybe misconceptions that you may have had of people that that were seemingly born on third base or that had a lot of privilege or opportunities. And I think that we all probably know people that squandered the opportunity, and then other people that, it does not disqualify someone from being excellent, the fact that they were born there, right?
So I think you make a couple of excellent points. I mean, first of all, we live in the greatest country in the history of the world.
Yep.
And even though right now, if you watch the news and back and forth and, all the things that divide us, we're Americans. And however your family and your lineage got here, the heritage of your own family, we're in America where you have opportunity. Where a kid like me can come from Magna, Utah, right? Cypress High School, Magna, Utah, and somehow have the life I've lived, right? I'm just very, like that wouldn't happen in most countries. So that's number one, and that we're all here. So you have those opportunities. And then you just never know. I think one of the things that as I get older, I'm probably way, way, way less judgmental than I was when I was younger. I was, it was just easy to, whatever. And now I really enjoy getting to know people and realizing that, what does being born on third base mean? Some people with the most amount of money that you will ever need or have in your life have a disastrous life and relationships and just the psychological makeup of their milieu that brought them to where they are is that was tougher than anything. Yeah, they might have money. And then you look the other way. There may be people that had this wonderful, nurturing life, but were, didn't have a pot to pee in their whole life and had to figure it out. And then people all in between, right? And I think that probably for me is just, man, I just want to get to know somebody and before casting any judgment, and I'm getting better at that. I think we're all built. That's part of life. And I think that society, social media, the way it is now, I think it's so easy to judge now. It's just part of what people do all the time. Yep. I mean, it's just part of life. So I think it's harder than ever. I think interpersonal interactions are less frequent, less meaningful.
Yep.
And I know as you get older, you become like the Clint Eastwood guy, the Gran Torino, get off my lawn, I'm the old guy, and not like it used to be. But there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
You go pre-iPhone, just the way we interacted, the way we talked with each other.
The world was different.
The world was different, and now it's not, and it's never going back. By the way, this is the new normal. So I think people like you, leaders that bring out interpersonal really genuine, authentic, hey, I want to get to know you, or I love my community, I want to help people. That's what's going to carry the day, even in this new environment.
Yeah.
But we need to be more intentional, I think, all of us.
I'm a firm believer that you can learn lessons in two ways, and that's either through counsel or through consequence.
Yeah.
And, if you can learn from other people's counsel, if you can see the consequences in other people's lives, whether they're positive or negative, rather than have to live out everything yourself and to go learn everything the hard way, you can expedite your experience, right? Like, experience is not linear. It doesn't have to be, I've done this for 30 years, therefore I've experienced everything bad, and now I'm in a position to succeed. It's, hey, who can I learn from? Who can I take positive counsel from? Who can I observe and see the consequences in their life?
That never ends. Like, the willingness to be mentored and being teachable. Being teachable, it's a quality that is not brought up a lot. But if you think of teachability, it probably, and it's different than humility, being teachable is probably one of the greatest qualities of the greatest people you know. They were teachable. Think about that think about anyone, and they're like, at some point they figured out that they don't know everything. They can be taught and learn, because to your point, the one way getting there quicker is by learning versus going through it. And then there is something to be said for, I always say, wisdom comes from bad experiences. Bad experiences come because of lack of wisdom, right? And so there is that to life too, where you got to kind of experience it. But boy, it's sure helpful if you listen.
Yep. No, I agree completely. Let's jump back a little bit. Let's go back. So you go through medical school. So you go to the University of Utah, graduate there, go to medical school, finish there. What brought you to Boise? What brought you up here of all places?
It's a crazy story that I don't tell very often. So I did residency at the University of Arizona. Ended up meeting one of my lifelong friends there. He was a year ahead of me, Tad Cowley. Okay. And while he was in Arizona with me in our residency, his family moved to Boise. Okay. And I didn't. Even though I lived in Idaho when I went to school, I had thought when I was out, I loved Arizona. I loved. There were a lot of great practice in Utah. When you get out, it's kind of the first time. You think about it. You go to undergraduate. You go on your mission, go to undergraduate, 4 years of medical school, 3 years of residency. Most of your friends that didn't go that route have had jobs for 8 to 10 years and are driving cars and have a house, right? So it's this first time you're like, oh, I can live wherever I want to live. Yeah. So I interviewed far and wide. I went. I really wanted it to be the decision for me of where I went, and so I really spent a lot of time and effort. I tried to moonlight places that I was thinking of going and really getting to know them because my theory was if I could make the right choice and not have to move or not like the community or what, it was a big decision, right? Yeah. So I had chosen Alpine, Utah. Oh. So Steve Young, the quarterback, his brother Mike Young, was the head of the ER group in American Fork, Utah, American Fork Hospital. And the first time I met him, I'm like, I love this guy. Yeah. I mean, he's Steve Young's brother. Yeah. He's athletic. And then their group was a bunch of studs. They were happy. They worked their tails off. And so I meet him. I go to dinner with them. I check out their thing. I'm like, this is my place. More so than anything, I'm like, these are the kind of people I want to do ER with. It was a great hospital, great setting. So I actually had a contract and was this close to signing it. Shannon and I went and found a lot because, I was at that time I was moonlighting it was crazy what I was doing, just trying to save enough money to buy my first lot, right? And so we had a lot picked out, contract in hand, and Tad Cowley called me and he's like, "Hey, don't sign that thing. You got to come to Boise. You're gonna love it." And I'm like, "Tad, one, you don't even have a job. They didn't have a job open up here." And he says, "Do me a favor, before you sign it, just come up. Just come up here and let me take you around." And so I flew up here, and it was late spring. It had to be late spring at this time, but it was cold here, and they just had a snowstorm. And I got off the plane, and it was before the airport was redone. It was tiny, and I come out, and it's cold, and it's those yucky February days.
It hasn't bloomed yet. All the trees are dead, and it's gray.
And anyway, he took me around, and the people were nice, but there was a point, and sometimes whoever's listening to this, and your belief in a higher power or God or whatever you believe in, I believe in it. I believe in it because of my life experiences, but I had this kind of overwhelming feeling. It was actually driving with him that like, this is where I need to come. I need to be here. This is my place. So I called Shanna, and she's like, what? Like,
I thought we were moving to Alpine.
We're moving to Alpine. Yeah. We have a lot picked out. And I said, and she's like, why? Do they have a job? And I'm like, they don't have a job. I just think this is where we need to come. This is where we need to be. And she said, I trust you. If that's what needs to happen, let's do it.
It's amazing.
Told Mike Young, not coming, and there's no contract here. So I got one other really funny story that I haven't told this forever.
Yeah, go for it.
So it was back when they had the balloon festival here in the summer. It was a huge
River Festival.
Festival, huge deal. So they called me and they said, hey, we don't have a job for you, but if you come early, we'll give you like 7 night shifts during the balloon festival because no one wants to work. And I'm like, yeah, thanks, buddy. Yeah. So I signed up.
We'll give you a free bowl of soup and a haircut, too.
So I signed up for it. I'm like, okay. So I said, okay, I'll do them. So they had these 7 night shifts open, and it was before my family was even here. So I came to town early, and I go in my first night shift. First time meeting, the very first time there, I got my credentialing done to do the night shifts, and I go in, and he'll know this because anyway, he's become a really good friend, but his name's Mark Birmingham. He's one of my partners for a long time. But I go back into the doctor's lounge getting ready for my shift, and he's like, who are you? I'm like, oh, my name's Tommy. I'm the new. He's like, well, we don't have a job. And I'm like, I know you don't have a job, but I'm just like Tad's friend, and I'm coming up. He's like, well, why are you working tonight? And he just like, and I'm like, you got to remember, I just said no to this job.
Yeah. And all these guys loved you.
I'm trusting my gut here, and that was my first. Now it turns out Mark was kind of like that to everyone, and everyone else was awesome. But then I just came, and it just was perfect. It was like the second I got here, and I think I would have been happy a lot of places, but this was our place. And then flash forward a little bit, we adopted our 2 daughters here, and whenever I talk about how I ended up in Boise.
Wow.
I think about that. I think about they're 22 and 20 now, and we adopted them from a different topic for a different time. But I think to myself, man, what's the measure of my life without those 2? And I wouldn't have had those 2 if I wouldn't have been in the right place. So it all works out.
They were calling you.
Yeah.
They knew you needed to be here before you knew you needed to be here.
Yeah.
I believe in that wholeheartedly. I've had similar experiences in life where, someone's cheering for you to be somewhere, and they may not even be born yet, right? Or they may not even be in your life yet.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. So let's fast forward. So you practiced medicine here for like 20 years, 18 years, something like that?
18 years.
18 years
total, and did all night shifts for the first. I always liked night shifts. There's, first of all, a little bit about ER medicine. I love it. It was the
45,000 patients.
Yeah,
I think I read.
I just love it, Cam. I mean, it was the best job you could ever have. I mean, you think about first of all, technically, I mean, you get to do cool stuff. You get to set bones and sew people up and do CPR and do resuscitation.
I had my appendix rupture a few weeks ago. I was in the ER. And
you did?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I just lived that.
So and then the other dynamic about it is it's very team oriented. So that if you talk to people that work in an ER, you are so dependent on the team surrounding you, because in one room you may have like a little kid with a rash, and you've got parents that are worried, and in the other room you may have someone having a cardiac arrest, and in the other room so you have to have this team of nurses and mid-levels and phlebotomists and x-ray and technicians of all kinds, and everyone working in concert to take care of people. And so it's very rewarding. And then I will tell you this, there, like in business, there's wonderful, we get to do wonderful things, and people are happy, and there's so much the professional satisfaction of me being able to interact with you and interact with engineers and interaction with our architects is wonderful. But what we don't have in business is patient care. So when you come in your time of greatest need, like whatever that may be, appendicitis, but it may just be you needed to talk to someone, like you were, whatever it is, And I think I got really good at walking in a room, there's some tricks to that, and connecting with a patient and finding out the real reason they were there, sitting on a stool, looking them in the eyes and saying, hey, how can I help you tonight? And you do that for 45,000 patients. And there's there's certainly secondary gain and there's all this stuff, but by and large, most night shifts are wonderful. You have 2 or 3 people that you connect with, and you really save them, and they're great. And that's your job.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So I loved it. I just loved it. I thought I would do it forever. Even when I started the other stuff on the side, I never intended on leaving the ER. There's just the reality at some point.
Yeah.
Some medical legally, like once you go part-time enough. So when I was slowing down, I would do 24-hour shifts in Weiser, because I thought I'm never quitting. I'm never quitting the ER. And then it's kind of like you play football, so it's kind of like playing football defensively, right? Once you're like trying not to get hurt,
that's when
it doesn't work. And like when you're not in it, ER, because it's so litigious and it's so fast-paced and everything, like if your head space is not right, and the second I started worrying about, oh man, did I order the right test, or am I doing the right stuff?
Yeah.
It got weird. And then I had two of my partners that were in lawsuits that were absolutely ridiculous. Not their fault at all. And I ran into both of them on the same night, and I called Shannon and said, I'm done. It like shook me. Yeah. Because I thought that's all I need at this point in my life is to have something like that. So that's why I left. I still do a lot with healthcare though. We bought Salter. We did a lot there. We've Stat Pads was a medically related. So it was the nation's largest defibrillator service company, where you take care of the oversight of these programs. We had 65,000 of them in the country. Wow. We did, during the pandemic, we started a company called Medical Network Solutions. It was very great. And then now last week I volunteered 2 days down at the Summit Hyperbarics and Wellness. So that's in concert with Mission 43. Yeah. We have 2 hyperbarics chambers, and we dive veterans that suffer from PTSD and traumatic brain injury. It's a 40-day protocol where they go in for an hour twice a day for 40 days, and the results are unbelievably cool. And so we started that with Joe Scott and his family and Roger Quarles and them. But it's awesome. So I get to volunteer down there.
That's amazing.
And this was so last week, I love it because it still gives me that connection where I'm able to see patients. And we had a guy graduate last Friday after 40 days, and they make a big deal when he comes out of the chamber for the last time. Yeah. And he had a speech prepared and just thanking everyone and for the healing that he had experienced in just such a short time and how life-changing that was. So I love having still.
Yeah, no, that's a big deal. And I'm a firm believer, as I know you are as well, that when you help people, it really ultimately helps you. Yeah. Right? The giver is really the beneficiary.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So let's talk somewhat briefly, but I want to hear and maybe help introduce people that don't know, how did you transition into becoming a real estate developer, right? Like, how does this happen from being an ER doctor to becoming a real estate developer?
Are we okay on time?
Yeah, and I know that you can tell the story for a long time, and you and I have talked about this before.
I'll just tell
those
the very
don't know.
Very quick version. So my father is the hardest working man ever. I would put him up against him. He still works right across the hallway. He's unbelievable. Guy's
out of your house fixing pipe when it's 0 degrees outside.
The guy's a machine, and he's almost 80. He's a machine. But when I was in high school, he worked 3 jobs. He was an electrician in the copper mine. He framed houses, and he pumped gas at a rich kid that went to my school's gas station. Okay, that was my dad. Yeah, worked his butt off, and he's physically the strongest guy I've ever known. He's mentally the strongest guy I've ever known, and he worked his tail off. Well, he was framing a little building on the side to make some extra money, and the guy that was over the project said, "Hey, you kind of know a little bit about everything." He said, "Yeah, I've framed. I've kind of done everything." He's like, "Have you ever thought about coming to work? Will you think about coming to work for us as a construction manager for a development company?" So when I don't know exactly what year I was in school, but like I was in high school, it was a big decision for him because he's kind of a risk-averse blue-collar guy saying, "Hey, I think I'm going to quit my job that I've had Kennecott Copper, and remember everyone stayed there for 40, 50 years, and I'm going to go work for a developer." So he did that when I was in high school. He went to work for the Boyer Company down there. So in my mind, like that's where kind of this came from.
Okay.
I watched him now become the construction manager, and if you go down to Salt Lake Gateway, it's all.
Oh yeah.
So my dad
for the 2002 Olympics.
my dad did Gateway for them.
Okay.
They're one of the largest developers in Salt Lake, so he was in it. And anyway, I'm up here and I'm doing my night shifts right across this freeway from where we are right now, and that corner was houses, and so I'm like, and I knew this. I knew the hospital needed medical office space, and it was when the economy was really hot. It was pre-Great Recession.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm going to go buy up all those houses. I'm going to go door to door and buy them all up. And if
you should go knock on people's doors and say, "Hey, I'm here to buy."
So
your
I
house.
would leave in the morning, and I'd be in my scrubs, and I'd go knock on the door, and they're like, "Yeah, like first of all, what are you doing here?" And
Yeah.
I'm like, "Hey, I'm just."
No, we're not interested. Yeah.
So I buy them all. It took a long time. It's a really great story, a long story, but that and then I called my dad, and said, "Hey, why don't you quit your job and come up here, and let's develop this corner, because I think we could do medical office. We can maybe get a Walgreens on the corner." And he's like, "Son, what are you talking about? Like,
this is crazy.
This is crazy." But you know what? We over about a year period, we got a partner to kind of, because it was a lot, right? It's a big corner.
Yeah.
And then he quit his job and came up, and that's how we started Ahlquist Development in '04. Me and my dad, and it's a so we had a one room little office with a card table in it, and it was him and me, and then my brother-in-law. We needed a property manager once we got going, and that was us for a long time. And we did, and then the Great Recession hit, dude. And that's a podcast for another time.
That is. I mean, that's a whole podcast.
But we had Still in the Air on the corner. We had 3 projects going, and it like Lehman Brothers shut down, and it froze, and it's like, I've ruined.
How are we going to keep this together?
I flat out, I've ruined my life.
Yeah.
There's no way out of this, because I'm, at that point, I'm early in on it. These projects are huge. You're personally guaranteeing everything. And I'm glad I went through it, because it's for sure.
What did that do to you? Like, what do you feel like you
So
gained
I
from
think
that
I
experience?
think before then, I am the kind of guy that if there's one drop of water in a glass, it is full.
Yeah.
It's not half full.
Yeah.
It's full. I'm very optimistic, and so I would not let creep into my mind at any time any negativity on anything. And if you said to me, "You can't do it," I'd say,
Watch me.
"Watch me." And if you said, "That's just too hard," I'd say, "Yeah, but I got it," right? And so that's how I was built. And when the Great Recession happened, for the first time ever, I'm like, "Oh, there's no way out of this. I've screwed up. I'm going to declare bankruptcy. I'm going to, I'll just keep working my way through. But I have ruined, there was no way out of this stuff." Because the banks, if you remember, banks canceled all your loans.
Yeah.
In one phone call, they called and said, your loan, look at clause 76
on page
2B,
287, yeah.
and this is the event, you're done.
Yeah.
And you're just sitting there going, "Well, we're dead." So why it was good for me is there's an experience I talk about often, because I remember it so distinctly. What I told myself is, the only thing I can do is keep working. So I literally, and I don't know how many months I did this, I worked every day, or at least 29 or 30 days a month in the ER. I was lucky enough that I had a job that I could just do that, pick up every single extra shift. And the way our pay works is, once you get past about 8 or 9 shifts, and all that money comes back to you. So it's like 100% back to you after you hit this thing. So I could make a lot but I was killing myself, but I did it. So I'm just going to keep working and keep paying stuff, and just try to look for a light.
Try and float this thing along.
Yeah, and then but I didn't see the path, Cam. That's the point. I didn't see the path. I was depressed, I think, for the first time ever. I mean, I think I didn't. People would tell me
For
about
someone who's unbelievably optimistic,
and people that would tell me, people that were like, the one thing I learned through this is some empathy, because people that would say they were struggling with depression, or how am I going to do that? I would always go, "What do you mean? Like, bootstrap it, like, come on, let's go,
sun shining, get up,
let's
do
go,
something."
right?"
Yeah.
And
people die in bed. Yeah,
that's right. And for the first time, I experienced situational, depression. And I remember I'm working 30 days a week in the ER, and I remember driving home in my car, because I remember what kind of car I drove. That's how specific this memory is. And I pulled into my garage, and I sat in my garage, and I thought, I can't get out of my car. I don't want to get out of my car. And I just sat there. And I thought, I'm screwed. And there's just, no matter how many shifts I work, no matter what I do, there is no way out of this. And I just sat, and I don't know how long I sat there, but it was a long time. I just sat in my garage thinking, negative thoughts. It's over. And that was the low for sure. And then for me, a lot of just really kind of like, I'm one of these, and I'm sure you're this way too, Cam. You just sit and think, there's got to be a way through. There's got to be a way through. You just run scenarios like, okay, this, and then it was shortly after that I remember seeing the pathway through. And when I help or counsel someone, I'm like, find the pathway through.
Yeah.
Once you see the pathway through a light, even if that changes, right? It's not going to be linear, but if you find a pathway, then focus on that, like all your energy to that. And that is what lifted me out, right? I'm like, okay, here's what I need to do. And then I was okay. But I'm glad I went through it because it taught me a lot. It taught me, now since then, everything we do now, we say the question, what if the worst happens?
Yeah.
In fact, we're doing a big project, a giant project right now. Huge amount of risk for me. And I had a conversation last night with a guy on the phone at 10:30 at night. And he's like, okay, I'll do it because it requires a ton of money. And it's going to have wild returns. But he said, what is the worst thing that can happen? And I said, I'm glad you asked. Here's the worst thing that can happen. I think these are less than 1%, but here they are. Boom, boom, boom. And he's like, I'm glad you thought about those.
Yep.
So it did change me in the fact that there are things that happen that are out of your control, and you need to think about them, and you need to have okay, if this happens, if the worst thing happens, this is what we're going to do. It was a great learning experience. And another long story, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. That's powerful, though. I think that, and really that's what I want to get into, right?
Yeah.
I want people to see who is this guy behind just, maybe the name on the side of the building or, what we, see from a distance or on social media. Last thing I want to talk about, kind of get into, and again on this, I feel like we could do entire episodes on a bunch of these different topics. If you were talking to someone, you mentor people come to you asking for advice. If someone doesn't have the life that they want currently, let's say it's someone, whether it's someone that's had a career in the past, maybe someone who's in the middle of a bad situation, they're going through a spot in their career, their life, where they're not happy, they feel like they don't know where to go, where to turn, or finding the direction of what's next, right? What are things that you found that are helpful to you, that are helpful to others? Or, if someone said, hey, look, I got into this career, I thought I wanted to be an accountant, went to school, studied, I've been in this career for 10 years, 15 years now, I hate it, I want to get out of this, but I don't know where else I can go, right? There's a big risk to jumping, I'm married, I have kids, we have a house, I have, all these things. How do I get to where I want to go, right? You changed careers, you made a shift with your life. How do I go make something similar happen in my life?
So everyone's circumstance is a little different, but I think there are some really common, good kind of advice you could give people, and I do a lot of it. Number one, I think the idea that people take these giant risks, if you really look, most of the time it's mitigated.
Yeah.
And that's the first thing for them. So I usually try to start with someone and say, hey, what are you doing now? I know you hate it, but how do you keep doing that and find passion within that while you're mitigating and making this plan for the change, right? Yep. And I think just that concept for people, they're like, oh, so I don't have to just jump.
Yeah.
And I think that's healthy. So that's one. Two, mentor. I'm just huge on mentors. Find someone who genuinely cares about you.
Could not agree more.
Who genuinely will put the time in. I had an unbelievable experience 2 weeks ago. I give a talk at Mission 43 every year, and I've done it for years now. And it's a 4-hour talk, which is crazy. But you just sit and interact with these people. Yeah. It's their leadership fellowship, and every year I get a few of those people that ask me to be their mentors, and I always say yes. I had a call with a lady a couple weeks ago where she had sent me over a business plan. She's been busting her tail for years on this thing, and she just got on with me, and I'm like, hey, I've read all your stuff. I've looked into it twice, and I have some questions. And in about 15 minutes, I'm like, I had her so pumped up and on fire. She's like, that's it. She's just like, I can't believe that's it. Like, she was just right back where she needed to be. And when I got off, it was a Zoom call. When I got off, I'm like, I love this, because sometimes in life you just need a mentor to put in some time and effort that says, hey, have you looked at it this way? So the power, why I tell the story is the power of mentorship, of having someone else that cares about you genuinely. It can't just be casually, that will look into where you are and will help you and give you advice. It can be powerful, and we all need mentors. So that's one, you don't have to jump quickly. You can mitigate. 2, find a mentor. 3, you got to really check yourself and say, where's my passion? Where's my energy? What am I willing to do? There are a lot of people that want change. They want something different. They want, and I'm not just saying money. I'm talking career, satisfaction, relation, whatever the want list is. But you need to check yourself and say, what am I willing to do? What am I willing to give up? Am I willing to put in the work and effort and energy? And if the answer to that's no, then the next question is, how do you get that? Because you can.
Yeah.
But you got to be ready. You got to be ready to go do these things. And I think a lot of that is real personal work, right? You're going to have to put the work into, okay, I've got this life, I've got this career, I've done whatever I've done in my life. How do I do a reset? And how do I get the motivation, to get the fire burning inside me? And then you can sit down and say, okay, let's come up with a vision and plan. And a lot of people have the vision. I mean, they have the fire. They're ready to go. And if they're ready to go, if you have a mentor and you're ready to go, and you're ready to go do the work, think of the world we live in right now.
Yeah.
You can
almost so many opportunities.
You can almost pick anything right now.
I found that most people don't often hate what they do. They just hate the way they do it.
Yeah.
Right? And so maybe the way that you're doing it feels like the only way.
Yes.
Right? And there's so many opportunities. I mean, I'm interviewing someone next week that has, grown millions of followers by giving financial advice over social media.
Yeah.
Right? And there's so many different ways of finding ways. Like, I would be really terrible sitting in a cubicle all day, right? I have a master's degree in engineering.
Yeah.
I would suck working for someone else, sitting in a cubicle all day. Like, I'm not built that way. I'm not wired that way. It's like, how do I take my education? How do I take what I do love? I mean, I was a little kid that loved building stuff out of Legos. How do I take what I like, what I love, different parts of who I am, and go make that into something else that can make me feel satisfied and that I'm happy about and that I love, and getting to interact with people. And so I think that's an important point that you bring up, that people don't often hate what they do. They just hate the way that they're currently doing it. Yeah. And having a mentor, having people that can give you alternative perspective, and it goes back to being teachable, right? If you can be teachable, if you can learn,
you can be teachable. And I will add, one of the things that I tell whoever I'm talking to, and again, I get to do this a lot. I think if you drew a line on the board of kind of like happiness and joy for most people, and you say, remember a time where you felt that. I think the pathway away from that line is usually slow, and it's usually tangled with other things. And whatever happened to that person, they're away from that line, right? And I always tell them, it may be 5 years, it may be 1 year, it may be you may have drifted from your thing, right? Your happiness, your core values that keep you in a really good place and make you motivated to just go set the world on fire. What I promise them is, the second you take the steps needed to get you back to that line, that is a direct line. And I believe that with all my heart. I've watched it. I've watched people be from this place where they're lost, and maybe it's not a career change, but they're lost within their career, or they've got some personal stuff they need to, or just confidence. That momentum that gets you back to that line is direct. And it's shocking how within 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 2 months, you'll go, hey, you see it. You see it in the color of their face, their eyes. They're like, yeah, I'm back. Yeah. And just hearing that the line and pathway back is direct, you can find yourself back to a place where you're feeling joy and energy and passion for life. You've got direction. You just need to follow some steps. That in itself is hopeful for people that may feel like, I just don't know what I'm doing right now. Yeah. No, I agree. Love it. Last thing I wanted to hit on as we conclude, this is one of my favorite questions to ask people. I ask people all the time whenever I interview them. It, I think, gives great insight into people and the trials and things that we go through. Because you and I are friends, and this is fun kind of sitting on the opposite side of it, where I'm asking you the questions instead of the other way around.
and I know you've been through a number of very difficult experiences. If you don't mind sharing with us, maybe not but one of the most difficult experiences you've been through in your life, and how did you find your way through that?
Oh, I've had a bunch. I think you could say, just to give the listeners, like if you said business, the difficult things, there's a whole bunch of those.
Yep.
And you could say
family,
personal relationship, family, a ton of those. You could say personal, like health stuff, and a ton of those. So just to be clear, in my life, it is chock full of lots of negative experiences that you have to deal with, right? They're just part of life. And I think that's one of the things I try to tell my kids is, we call it putting hay in the barn, man.
Yeah.
If you're not going through a tough time right now, you're putting hay in the barn. And anyone that has cows knows what that means. You're going to use that all, right? And the hard work is now putting it there, because then you've got it all stored up when it's going to happen. Living life that way, if you live life with gratitude and understanding that if you don't have big problems right now, well, they're going to be around the corner next, that takes care of most of the problems in life, right? Because you're living with gratitude, you're living arrows out, like, hey, and then I'm supposed to have trials and problems.
Life is not supposed to be
it's not free
of trials and
in fact, it's supposed to be the other way around, right? And then they come and you're like, okay, here's the next one, and it's just a different deal. But for me, the one I would tell you is I had open heart surgery, which was super unexpected. They found I had the Widowmaker 95% occlusion in my LAD.
You thought that you were going to be
gone. And then had that fixed, and then I had a congenital abnormality which required open heart surgery and a rework of all my coronary arteries. And then that was not the hardest thing, but the year after that I had a massive heart attack while in McCall on my ranch. And I didn't think I was going to die a year earlier, but I thought that was it for me. And for me, it was life-changing, because the first time I went through it, I should have been more worried, and I really wasn't. I thought, I'm going to be fine getting through this. And this time, I went from my ranch to the ER in McCall. I was life-flighted to St. Luke's. It's a long story, but the whole point of it was I had the entire time very peacefully to know that was it.
Yeah.
And I think for me at my age then to say, I had a great life, and I went through, the really beautiful thing for me is I had a ton of really good time of reconciliation with all the things that mattered in my life that year before because of my open heart surgery. And I went down every one of my relationships, and I'd seen my grandson born, and I thought of my wife, and I thought of my kids, I thought of my business relationships, and it was just pure gratitude. There was zero fear, and I was at complete peace. And then when I woke up, I woke up different. I'm like, you know what? I thought that was it, and I'm living on borrowed time now. And so for me, it's like, okay, how can I? You talked about balance, but for me, it's prioritize. How can I really? And I think I'm a better person now.
We don't see the world as it is; we see it as we are, right? And when things like that happen to you and you change, you see the world differently.
I don't see things the same now, and I really mean that. Relationships I took for granted before, I don't as much now, and I'm not perfect. Just the time we have, who we do things with, how I want to spend my days. It's just different now because it's just in a different context, and I'm really grateful that it happened to me at the age it did. I think I'm going to be a better husband, better father, better grandpa, better business partner, better community member because of that experience. You never want those to happen, but when they do, can you learn from them, grow from them, and move on?
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. Well, Tommy, thank you. Thanks for being here with us. I appreciate you. Thank you for sharing your experience and wisdom. We'll share your links in the bio and clips as we post this, but really can't thank you enough, not only for the friend and mentor that you are to me. Tommy sat down and took an hour of time last summer with my son, Cannon.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome.
Was working on
By the way, that
project.
That kid's unbelievable.
Yeah, he is. I love him. He's great. Now this year he's starting businesses. That's the new thing, cool. Right? He spent last year learning, building out business plans, and now he's going to be starting some businesses. But you were really gracious in taking your time with him, and I can speak firsthand to the knowledge of all, to the extent that I'm aware, of the impact you have on people in our community and the things you volunteer for, the things that you give of your time and your resources to. And frankly, we're lucky to have you, and glad that whether it was Allie and Chloe or who else influenced you to come to Boise, Idaho, we're blessed to have you here and grateful to have you. So thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks, Ken.
with us
You're a
today.
great friend, great example. I appreciate being on. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.